Hello, everyone. This is another week of instructional design. Today, I'm focusing on AI in instructional design, specifically through the lens of mathematics education, because that is my area. AI is moving quickly into classrooms and into the way teachers and instructional designers create lessons, assessments, and learning materials. But the big point from the readings is that AI is not just a new tool, rather, it changes what we should design for. In mathematics, one student can easily generate answers with AI. Our job as teachers or educators should shift towards designing learning experiences and assessments that make thinking visible so students can explain, justify, and verify rather than just produce a final answer. Again, my name is Derek Pumi. So, having been granted the flexibility to include whatever resonates with us in terms of our research areas, I have decided to cover three connected ideas in this presentation. First, I will discuss the impact of AI on instructional design. Second, I'll highlight key ethical considerations. And third, I'm going to classify AI tools for instructional designers based on what they actually help us as educators do. And of course, whether that's lesson design, building representations and explanations, creating assessment, or capturing student reasoning as you will learn in the slides that come next. My goal here is to leave us with a balanced view. There's been a lot of conversation about AI, but what I would like to leave here or leave with you is that AI can support learning, but only if we design for understanding and put the right guardrails in place. I'll start with a brief introduction of what artificial intelligence is. Of course, there's been a lot of explanations or definitions about AI, but there is this paper that I read by Fitria 2021, and he states or he argues that artificial intelligence is the process of modeling human thinking and designing a machine so that it can behave like humans, or other terms called cognitive tasks, namely how machines can learn automatically from program data and information. So this is going to give us a brief overview of what artificial intelligence is. Of course, it's been a very popular topic in contemporary discussions. So the impact of AI on instructional design. The first one is personalized learning. There are a lot of AI tools around, but these can help in personalizing learning. So AI enables learning experiences tailored to learners' needs, preferences, interests, and skill level. So for instructional design, as we know, this means we can plan differentiated pathways based on learner evidence rather than fixed sequence. The second one is adaptive learning. AI can help adjust pace and difficulty using performance data, time on tasks, and response patterns. Of course, we know there are individual differences in the classroom, and so AI help us in adapting learning to students. The third one is intelligent tutoring systems. So AI tutors can provide guided practice, hands explanations and human-like coaching. You'll find out in the next slides that there is this AI tool called Photomath. If a student is struggling to solve, let's say, systems of equations, Photomath would be able to help the student solve it, but not just give the answers, but also try to show students the steps or the methods in coming up with the answer. The fourth one is natural language processing. So here, instead of learners passively consuming static materials, right, I do believe that AI can support learning through conversation, as most people do. Of course, a person is having headache and they just go to ChatGPT or Gemini and be like, oh, okay, so I am feeling this in my body. What is going on? And you kind of have that conversation with AI as if it were human beings. So there's that kind of component or impact on instructional designers. And when you think about it this way, it changes how designers write prompts, right? Structure learner interactions and anticipate um, misconceptions. The fifth one is learning analytics. I kind of touched on this a little bit in the module 5 where I talked about IXL because mathematics is my area. So what AI can do is help analyze learners' data to detect patterns, right? What Where the student is struggling, where the student needs help, and all that. The sixth one, very important, is assessment and feedback. So AI can grade certain tasks, which I normally do before I turn in an assignment. If I have the rubric, I just give it to AI and say, hey, could you grade my assignment? And so it's one of the impact on instructional design. There are other impacts according to the text that we were supposed to read. We have resource allocation, gamification, of course, it's very important. Predictive analytics and content creation. Another cross-cutting area or an area of importance is ethical considerations. AI has come to stay. We all know that, very important. It's making life easier. However, not anybody or not everybody can have access to AI. And so it happens to be part of the ethical considerations. We all know AI helps only if a student is able to access it. There is a need for us then to plan for uneven devices and provide a non-AI option so that learning does not necessarily depend on technology access. The second one is bias in data and algorithms. We all know AI goes through, as we all know, training based on the concept of neural networks. So what I input to AI may determine the answer that I get. We might have different wording or the same wording, but based on certain emphasis on what I want, we might have different answers, right? So there is that kind of bias. So AI feedback can reflect biased training or narrow definitions. We should therefore treat AI as one input and verify with student reasoning, multiple solution strategies, and teacher judgment. There should always be the human component. AI should not be autocratic. The third one is data security and privacy. AI tools may collect sensitive student data. So as educators or teachers, we have to use school approved platforms that minimize identifying information, right? And the last one is collaboration. I said earlier that you can have a conversation with AI, right? And it comes to its own detriment, right? AI can either strengthen collaboration or quietly replace it. And one ethical risk is that students start relying on AI as private helper that's reducing peer discussion. And we all know mathematical argumentation and social construction of understanding based on the learning theories we learn, according to the constructivist perspective, that it's very important collaboration. So we should also be mindful of that. All right, this is the slide that I dive a little bit deeper into AI tools for instructional designers. Of course, I am going to apply the mathematics education lens because, again, that is my area. I have four strong areas that I'm going to focus on, of course, based on um, the functions of these AI tools. The first one is sense making and rapid ideation. I have content transformation. Of course, there are AI tools that help with that. We have explanations and representations. And then lastly, assessment generation and fast formative cycles. There are a lot of functions of these AI tools. We have differentiation, reflection and revising, of course, different tools for different jobs. So selection becomes very powerful. For sense making and rapid ideation, my focus is going to be on Chat GPT. So here I have clear learning targets, prerequisite map, misconception list, and lesson sequence. So what is this supposed to mean? If I choose ChatGPT for sense making and rapid ideation, what I would do is say um, I will feed ChatGPT with, let's say, solve multi-step linear equations with rational coefficients. And you all know once I do that, it's going to return prerequisite skills. So prerequisite skills could be distributive property, combining like terms, and then it's able to come up with common misconceptions such as sign errors, distributing negatives, and then it can also provide clean progression from concept, guided practice, and independent practice, right? So essentially, you ask it to generate essential questions like when does simplifying change an equation's solution set? So this helps in sense making and rapid ideation. The next one is Notebook LM. Of course, this is being powered by Google's Gemini, but this has a different purpose, of course, for administrators, educators, teachers, right? It behaves like a traditional administrator, like I said earlier. Um, when you upload, say, a worksheet or a textbook section on, let's say, systems of equations, it is able to generate a student-friendly guided note page, 3 tiers of practice, and this can be emergent, approaching, or level, and then bilingual friendly definitions for solutions. So one thing about Notebook LM is that in order to reduce any form of hallucination, you always want to feed Notebook LM with the document that you would like to ask questions about. I have learned that teachers do upload their standards, let's say mathematics standards, and then Notebook LM is able to suggest based on that um, how they can teachers can scaffold practice set real world problems so that students will be able to actually student of different reading levels will be able to understand. For explanations and representations, I'm a very big fan of Adobe Express. There are other AI tools out there that perform the same function, but I love Adobe Express. So let's say I design a mini lesson where students connect equation, table, and a graph. Of course, that is what linear equation is about. So the tool will help as a teacher craft two parallel explanations. Let's say one for beginners and then for students who are very rich, who has rich understanding in the concept, right? But then you would argue that does Adobe Express have that capability to do, the graphing, the table alone? So one thing I do is that I pair Adobe Express with Desmos, and those of you who have gone gone through this instructional design journey with me, I use Desmos a lot to show students how to graph certain equations. So I use Desmos to generate accurate graphs and tables, and then I import it into Adobe Express to annotate, let's say, the intersection point, add sentence frames for justification, and design a polished one-page explanation guide for students. Native AI, as the name implies, it's used for assessment generation and fast formative cycles. So you can generate exit tickets, quizzes, item banks, and quick checks aligned to objectives. Right. These are other AI tools for instructional designers. Of course, I made sure these align more with mathematics. So the first one is Grammarly. Of course, Grammarly is used for revision, reflection, Magic School, Padlet AI, Photomath, GeoGebra, and Squirrel AI. Each of these tools have different functions, and yeah. Right. So based on what I have presented thus far, these are the key takeaways. So AI changes what instructional design should optimize for, let's say, in mathematics. Less content production and more designing tasks and assessment that require reasoning, justification, and verification, because AI can generate answers but sometimes incorrect ones. Also, strong AI error assessment emphasize evidence of understanding, whether that be explaining, critiquing errors, compare methods, interpret in context, not just correct final answers. Third, AI tools should be selected by function, whether that be planning, presentation and explanation, formative assessment, feedback and analytics, or differentiation. Lastly, inclusive access, bias, privacy or security, and collaboration need to be designed in through tool choice and classroom teams. And these are my references in case you would want to learn more from this presentation. And let me know if you have any comments, any feedback. I would be here. And thank you. Have a wonderful weekend.